Welcome to Righting Wrongs here at Hudgell Solicitors. I'm Keith Phillips, and joining me to discuss the latest developments in the investigations into the medical treatment carried out by orthopaedic surgeon Kuldeep Stohr at Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge is our senior medical negligence solicitor, Elizabeth Maliakal. Welcome, Elizabeth. Now, you're advising families in relation to this ongoing investigation involving several hundred patients treated by Kuldeep Stohr, both adults and children, and you have some key advice for those affected. Now, firstly, though, the investigation being conducted into Cambridgeshire University Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust, what's it focused on?
We know from the Trust, from their own information that they've provided to the patients and from their own media releases in their website, that they are focusing their review of treatment provided to patients who have had their treatment reviewed independently by a surgeon called Mr Hunter.
Now, Kuldeep Stohr, she's been suspended from working as an orthopaedic surgeon while the investigation takes place. When were concerns first raised about her work?
It's public knowledge now that concerns were first raised about her work in 2015, and in 2015 and 2016 an independent review was conducted by the Trust. They had instructed an independent orthopaedic surgeon to review her care, and we now know that the Trust have employed a company called Verita to look back at that review almost 10 years ago and see whether that review was carried out appropriately and whether the recommendations following that review were implemented.
Now, what have these reviews revealed so far about the medical practices that were carried out?
We know that there are certain types of surgery that this individual surgeon carried out where the outcome was not what was anticipated or expected, and that there may have been some failures in the standard of conducting those surgeries.
And were there concerns about the quality of the care?
Concerns have been raised about the quality of the care. Concerns have been raised about outcomes, and so the focus of the Trust external review of those patients will look at that in more detail.
Now, some parents have received written confirmation from the Trust about those concerns, highlighting problems with practices. It's a worrying time for families and your clients.
It's an extremely worrying time for our clients and their families. A lot of the families that we are seeing have had children treated at the Trust, and those children had complex health needs to begin with. They felt that they were in a large institution, a world-renowned institution, and they were in safe hands. They felt that the difficulties that their children had been left with following surgery was one of those things. They didn't ever anticipate that the difficulties their children currently experience may be due to poor care to begin with. So it's come as a shock to them, and they want answers, understandably, swiftly.
Now, those patients, those former patients, parents of children who were treated, they've been contacted to say an investigation is underway. Have they been told any more details in terms of how long it will last?
Many of the families that we've been represented have received what appears to be a standard letter with a patient information leaflet attached, essentially saying that the Trust is carrying out a review of around 700 patients who are treated by this particular surgeon, that the review is likely to take up to 1 year. They've been informed that if they wish to contribute to the review, that they're able to call a helpline, and they've been informed that the independent experts who are reviewing their care have been carefully selected by the Trust.
And if anyone's listening now and they have concerns but haven't received a letter, should they seek legal advice if they've got concerns?
I would recommend that they do. I would recommend that if you have any concerns about the treatment that you've received from the orthopaedic department at Cambridge, that you do seek legal advice just to discuss your options. We are seeing clients who have received letters from the Trust saying they form part of the review, and some of those clients have already received acknowledgements that their treatment was poor. Some of those patients are still waiting for the outcome of the review. We've also had scenarios where patients have been informed that they don't form part of the review, but they have concerns, and we have felt that those concerns justify an investigation, so we have accepted those cases regardless. So generally speaking, yes, if you do have any concerns at all, I think it would be sensible to get advice now, so you can discuss your options and know what they are.
And those former patients of Ms Stohr, when they come to you for legal advice, What answers are they seeking? What outcomes are they looking for?
The vast majority of clients who come to us want to understand what has happened to them. They want an explanation of what has happened to them. They want to know whether there are any failures in their care, and ultimately whether any failures in their care have led to any physical or psychological injury. And that's perfectly understandable to want to know that, especially given what we now know in the media that so many patients are being reviewed.
Do you and your clients feel that the review the Trust has commissioned will be sufficient?
The Trust is making every attempt to reassure patients and their families. They have received correspondence. They have been informed that they'll be reviewed and informed and updated periodically every 3 months. They've been informed that the surgeons that they are using to assess their cases have been very carefully selected. They have also been invited to talk to the Trust if they wish to. The onus of speaking to the Trust about any concerns they have has been put on them. I do have some reservations about that. I do feel that if clients have any concerns, that really they should be spoken to, not be invited to be spoken to. The other slightly nuanced situation we have is that a lot of the children that we are seeing were operated on, who are now adults and are coming to us for advice, can't recall the treatment they received. And often the consent for treatments, the explanations, were given to their parents. So on some of those cases that we're investigating, we're actually speaking to the parents of our clients who are now adults and asking the parents what the treatment was that was provided, what was risks and benefits were explained. So one of my reservations about the current way that the investigation is being managed is that there's not really an adequate attempt to speak to the patients or their parents, if relevant, to take a full detailed history of what happened and what they were informed of.
Now, we're talking about several hundred former patients. Are you confident the reviews will be sufficient for each individual case?
The Trust have sought to reassure the families that we represent that their investigation will be thorough. They've told us that they've carefully selected the orthopaedic surgeons who are undertaking the review. We know that those surgeons will be looking at the medical records when conducting their reviews. There are certain aspects of standards of care, particularly in relation to consent, where the records alone are inadequate to form a view. Parents or patients themselves must be spoken to as to what they can recollect of that consenting process. Another reservation I have is in terms of working out if there has been substandard care, what injury has been caused by that substandard care. Really, in addition to the medical records and radiology, there has to be an examination of the claimant. So the review, whilst as thorough as it can be from the Trust perspective, does have some shortcomings.
You mentioned shortcomings. You've been contacted by people, former patients, who are not even part of the review.
That's absolutely correct, King. We've been contacted by patients who have been informed that they're not part of the review or have simply just not heard anything. And we are speaking to them at length, taking very detailed instructions. And if we believe that their concerns justify an investigation, then we have accepted their case and we will be having it independently reviewed ourselves.
And Elizabeth, when do you expect to find out more details of the investigation?
The Trust have got an enormous task. They have 700 patients, possibly more, whose records need reviewing. The records are complex, they are lengthy. Some of the treatments that have been provided were over 10 years ago. We know that it takes time for an independent expert to review those records. It's important that if care is being reviewed from 2015, 2016, that the experts instructed were in practice at that time doing that particular type of surgery. This is no small undertaking, it's a very detailed job. The Trust have anticipated that it will take 1 year. That's going to be a challenge. That would mean 2 cases being reviewed and completed per day for it to be completed in around a year. It wouldn't surprise me if it takes longer. And I think if patients and clients and families out there do have concerns, it's probably in their best interest to seek legal advice now, because it starts the ball rolling in terms of investigation if that's what's thought to be the appropriate way of moving forward.
And if some of those patients have had reviews, those reviews have come to a conclusion, and the Trust or the independent assessors say with no concerns, what if a patient is not happy with that conclusion?
If you have received a letter from the Trust saying that you formed part of the review and that the Trust's review has found that there were no concerns, but but you still have doubts, you still have a nagging feeling that things haven't gone right, then I would almost certainly speak to a solicitor, explain what those doubts are, explain what your concerns are, and allow them to assess on your behalf whether they feel that an investigation should take place. Certainly, the message that I would like to put out is that simply because the trust is of the view that there were no concerns doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot bring a claim. It might still be possible to investigate your concerns.
Now, there will be hundreds of former patients of Ms Stohr who are now looking back and questioning the standard of the treatment provided to them. Is it right for them now to seek some answers?
Absolutely. You can fully understand why patients and their parents who've placed the trust in who've placed their trust in the hospital to treat their children have then learnt that the surgeon who was operating on their children has had to have an independent review of 700 or more cases, are concerned. That's completely understandable. And I think if you have any worries about that, it's best to speak to a solicitor and discuss your options.
There have been calls for the reviews carried out in 2016 and 2024 to be made public. Your thoughts on that?
I completely echo that. I can understand why families want to know whether their children have formed part of either review, and if they have formed part of either review, to know what the outcome of that review was. They're entitled to know that. It's really important, and some families that I have spoken to whose treatment started after 2015 or 2016 have come to me and said, had I known that this particular individual surgeon had difficulties around their work, I would have thought twice about consenting to surgery with this particular individual surgeon. So I think it's absolutely right that Trust makes those reports public. Obviously, I understand that those patients' names would need to be redacted, but I think the individual patients themselves, if they've been subject to a review, should be notified, regardless of what that review showed. I think that's only right and fair.
Well, Elizabeth, final question. Over the coming months, many more people are going to be finding out the conclusions to the individual assessments of the care they've received. Should they wait for those letters to arrive in the post before seeking legal advice?
It is fine to wait if they wish to get the final review communicated to them. My recommendation would be that if you've received a letter saying that you're forming part of the review, the sooner you seek legal advice, the better, because the sooner the process starts with bringing in claims, if that's what the families wish to do, then the sooner we can get started on obtaining factual witness statements from patients and their families, obtaining medical records and radiology, obtaining independent expert evidence of our own. If you are in the cohort of patients that's going to be reviewed towards the end of that 1 year, possibly longer, that's an awful long time to wait. So I would suggest that it's best to get legal advice sooner rather than later if possible.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Keith.
Elizabeth Maliakal, our senior medical negligence solicitor, who is supporting clients and families of children treated by the orthopaedic surgeon Kuldeep Stohr at Addenbrooke Hospital in Cambridge. Thanks for listening to Righting Wrongs, and if you need further information, head to our website, hudgellsolicitors.co.uk.